gang of roustabouts are cutting up cinema like it's never been cut up before. There's going to be reviews, there's going to be interviews, there's going to be hijinks, and there's going to be a whole lot of cutting in this room. The Cutting Room Movie Podcast, coming at you 128 kilobytes per second.
I think stand-up comedy is in all of us. I'm not suggesting that we all have the talent to do it, but I'm certain there's a connection we have with the comic that makes us feel like he's talking for us and not necessarily to us. And some are sent from the gods like Carlin, Pryor, Kaufman, Marr, Rock, and Hedberg. And some just try, and that's okay. But one thing is for sure. They all have guts, and laughter comes from the guts, and there's something to be said about a man or woman who can get up on that stage with only a microphone in hand and move their guts into yours. You know, everybody on this show has guts, and I know for a fact our listeners have the guts. And all I'm really saying here is if you do have the guts, I guarantee you'll never be a punchline. You're listening to episode 95 of the Cutting Room Movie Podcast. As always, as usual, I am your host, Tom Detloff, and tonight I am joined by Mr. Joe Christiana, the counselor, Adam Shoulder, and once again, Billy Barassa is back with us. Our classic theme this time around is stand-up comedy. Last week we talked about Kevin Pollak's 2015 film Misery Loves Comedy. Tonight we're moving back a little bit in time, just a little bit back in time, Joe. Not like you like to throw us back in time.
But no, we're not. We're not going through the wormhole.
No, we're not. No, we're staying rather close. But we're going to be doing Martin Scorsese's 1983 film. It just gives me chills. The King of Comedy, starring Robert De Niro and the great Jerry Lewis, as well as Frank Whaley's film The Jimmy Show. So we're going to have a lot of fun. We're going to talk a little bit about Scorsese tonight. We're going to talk a little bit about an independent film that Frank Whaley wrote and directed and starred in. So it's going to be great. Also, you can check out our interview with Frank Whaley, which is right up on our website, right with the show. So a lot of cool things going on here at TCRMP. Mr. Billy Barassa is going to get things started tonight with his introduction to Scorsese's The King of Comedy. I got a feeling it's going to be a damn good one. Billy, let's get it rolling, dude.
This next nerd boasts the most extensive collection of Star Wars action figures on the show, but the ladies love him for his fantastic beard. Whip out your notebooks, because you know there's gonna be a quiz. It's Billy, the Human Thesaurus, Barassa.
I have a confession to make. I speak to Oprah Winfrey. Like your neighborhood psychic lady speaks with Cleopatra, Napoleon, or your beloved grandmother, God rest her soul, I speak to Oprah. We are seated on two pale lavender armchairs, plush, on stage before a live studio audience. I explain to her the path I trod to success, dispensing modest, pithy bits of wisdom. Cut to the audience close-ups, nodding attentively. Oprah asks a question. I pause a moment, reframe it more intelligently, and answer it. Everyone goes, "Ah, this is a man with insight." Oprah looks into camera. When we come back, she says, "More with our esteemed guest." Rising applause, talk show theme music, commercial. Why does this happen to me? I have never met the person Oprah. I never will. But for 10 formative years of my childhood, her image was on the family television every weekday afternoon. My mother seated and watching while on break from housewifely chores. Somewhere in the developing mind of a young boy who even then had contempt for this trashy daytime ritual, the inner symbolism of the talk show format slipped past conscious defenses, wormed like a virus into his inner psyche, and established itself as a symbol of need. Neurons reached out, seized this symbol, and took its ghostly shape. Its purpose was simple: to fulfill a thirst for attention, applause, adulation, and vindication. Even at that age, he had a powerful thirst for that aha moment when everything in a flash is made right. They understand me now. They were wrong and I am right. I always was and always will be. And so to this day, when I am particularly exultant about something I wrote or some minor achievement, when I'm feeling wounded, hungover, exhausted, or over-caffeinated, this fantasia may strike like an electric shock, telling me that I am a great misunderstood genius. Never mind that I am a conscious adult of 36 years and immediately groan to myself with embarrassment at this miserable flash of hubris. The mechanism goes on, unthinking, unstopping. Unchecked, it could easily twist a man into a Rupert Pupkin. If you have never met Rupert Pupkin, you're in for a treat. In 1983, fresh from the knockout punch of Raging Bull, Team De Niro Scorsese came out of left field with The King of Comedy, a movie that plays firmly in the key of nails on chalkboard. I recall the first time seeing this film, wanting and needing to crawl over the back of the couch and out a window. I could not believe that such a character as Rupert Pupkin existed, excruciating, indifferent, single-minded. He has come to embody for me a great fable of some human excess. In the film's opening scene, Pupkin, played by Robert De Niro in perhaps his finest performance, literally bumps into Jerry Langdon, played by Jerry Lewis, and tries promoting himself into a spot on Langdon's late-night talk show as a stand-up comic. Langdon gives him a shot, a real one, at an audition. But that's not good enough for Pupkin. For him, it's not about the work, about comedy, or even celebrity. It's about itching some scratch that confirms his own superiority to those around him. He is all mechanism, no reflection. He does not see people as individuals, but as tools or obstacles to his desire. Even his idol Langdon is a mere embodiment of Pupkin's desires and can be brushed aside when he ceases to be of help. The King of Comedy careens from one awkward, painful scene to another without ever a moment's comfort. It contains some of Scorsese's greatest restraint as a director, tying our nerves into knots and offering no release. There is violence, as always with Scorsese, lurking beneath the film's skin, but it stays bound up in verbal hostility and subtle body language. The only gun brought on screen is a prop. As with everything in the film, it's phony. But Pupkin, in his quest for 15 minutes of fame, is a clear reflection of Travis Bickle from that earlier masterpiece, Taxi Driver, and is probably even more unhinged. When release finally comes for Pupkin, it is not in hallways bathed red with light and blood, but in the violence of applause. It's here, in a spotlight, surrounded by a too clamorous crowd, that Pupkin seems finally at home. Home because he knows from his heart that the real relationship between fan and celebrity is not one of love, but of hate. Is this thing on?
Yeah. Oh, Billy, you're all done? I'm sorry. I had my microphone off. You kind of cut it short too quickly.
Hello. Is everyone there? Hello?
Rupert has left the building.
Hey, guys.
Yeah, Rupert.
Sorry, did I run on a little long there?
He's only on a 2.5-year stint. He'll be back soon enough. You just wait. Rupert will be back. No, Billy, this film, you know what? I mean, first of all, I can't, agree with you more with this being De Niro's best performance. And, I know that's, sometimes such a silly thing to say, but this is some powerful stuff. And you're talking about a follow-up to Taxi Driver and Raging Bull here, and to come up with this, like you said, it's out of left field. It's something completely different. Nobody, I'm sure, saw something like this coming in 1983 from both these guys. The movie is just so just brilliantly quiet, yet it's just constantly kicking you in the gut the entire time, and just
nerve-wracking.
It's just insane.
It's exhausting being with these people in this situation for 2 hours.
Everything is uncomfortable too, and I have seen this movie probably at least a good 5 times in my life. I haven't watched it in a while, probably in a few years, but even watching this film just the other day, I'm sitting in my living room, as uncomfortable as hell for an afternoon, and I just can't help but think that this is one of the greatest pieces of American cinema ever given to us. And the fact that it's from Scorsese, and the fact that it's from De Niro, and the fact that Jerry Lewis is in this movie.
Oh yeah, he's.
You know?
It's hard to explain. Like I'm always fascinated when a great artist uses symbols and capitalizes on an audience's reaction to someone or something. Like whether it's Mickey Mouse or the Empire State Building or something, and like having Jerry Lewis in that role is just it brings a whole world to that. It just wouldn't be the same if it was an actor who was not such an entertainment icon.
I think so. And from what I understood, I mean, he wanted to do this with Johnny Carson, and Carson didn't want to do it. And Lewis was probably his second pick, and really the right one. He's really extraordinary. I mean, he's full of rage, Billy.
Jerry Lewis?
Yeah, Lewis is well, you called him Langdon. It's Jerry Langford. Langford is the name of the character.
Oh, my bad.
No, that's okay. But Langford is just so full of anger and just solitude. And he, I mean, I really got intimate with this film this time around, and just, noticed, I love it when Diane Abbott says, there's just the table's only set for one,
Yeah,
it's
I never noticed that line until this.
Right. And it just all made sense to me because I was, watching him in his New York apartment, and it was just this huge apartment, and the same thing, his dining room, there was, he just sat there by himself and ate. And, this is a man that seems to just not like people. I don't know if he was always like that. He says he kind of has always been like that. I mean, through the dialogue, but I'm not sure if, he was like that or became this way, but he just, for a man that's entertaining so many people, Jerry Langford is just a miserable person that doesn't want to be around anyone, and then of course Rupert Pupkin comes along,
best friend anyone could ever ask for.
Ever. But no, seriously, I mean, this film just doesn't, listen, reality and fantasy are just like kind of like, on screen, just kind of walking hand in hand here, which is just really weird. I think that this is just an extraordinary, I'm masturbating here. I'm sorry.
You're a babbling fool.
No, but this is it. To me, when we do the show and we talk about movies and we watch great movies, I mean, listen, Joe, I'm going to get you in here. I mean, to me, brother, this is really one of them, dude. To me, this is pure cinematic beauty.
Yeah, man, it's a great film, and the run that they had, these two guys, with those is just remarkable, and as good as any string of films that anybody has put together, Absolutely. And yeah, Jerry Lewis is amazing in the film. It would have been really weird to see Johnny Carson in it. That is a real. I didn't know that. That would have been a really it would have turned a really interesting dynamic, and it would have pushed this over into areas that only really people started messing with later. It seems later on, where there's this
like with the reality
really
TV.
gray line between reality and being John Malkovich. That's just fresh in my head because we mentioned it last time. Just having somebody playing a fictional character of themselves, and how much is it's a really interesting dynamic, especially here in this celebrity, this culture of celebrity. Would have been amazing. But yeah, you're right, man. These talk show hosts are like become, they have this wall up around them as a defense mechanism to fend off all the natives that are trying to get in, get into the fort. It's pretty crazy because Letterman's renowned, pretty infamous for that, and so is Carson, and then I guess Jay Leno's defense is just to be a complete plastic bubble face or whatever the hell he's got.
They're really not men of the people, Joe.
They seem like they're no longer part of the race anymore. You know what I mean? No. They're not allowed. They're like this traffic directors in this cosmic world of absurdity.
Right, right. It's easier to get access to the president than some of these guys. You know, I jokingly say that, but like, it's so true. You're right. I mean, something happens, I guess, to them that is just, right. They just put up a wall, I guess, man.
Yeah, I guess, I remember reading something Warhol was writing about, and he was talking exactly about celebrity, and he assumed this persona of being like this, like just detached and not there. And he just said, I never used to be like that because I didn't have to be. And I think that once you get that celebrity, either you're the kind of person that just laps it up and lavishes in it, or you have to just disconnect yourself. You become a man apart. You know
I
what
think
I mean?
Jerry Lewis's character here at the end when he's talking to Rupert Pupkin, when they have him taped up, and Langford is trying to be calm and talk his way out of the situation, and he kind of talks about being paranoid and how you're constantly worried about people taking from you and screwing things up for you, and whether or not you'll be back next week because of someone else's mistakes. And there's like this whole paranoia, I guess, when you're on top, when anybody's on top, that you have to just be constantly worried that you're going to get knocked down at some point.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting about that scene is that he's giving Pupkin what he wants, or what he thinks he wants, which is, to connect with him on a human level. And it's the first time that it seems like that he's human at all.
But he makes the mistake by saying, I give you my word. Isn't my word good enough? And that's where Pupkin was not fooled, because it's like, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. He gave him his word at the beginning of the film and didn't, do anything for him. So, it's just such a dark moment, and it's so funny how dark Pupkin is, how just incredibly happy he is the whole time, like throughout the whole movie.
He's delusional. It's easy to be happy when you're not living in the reality.
I mean, he gets upset with the Bernard character a couple of times, and his mother. I guess it's women Pupkin has a problem with. I don't know. I'm trying to figure it out. But let's get Adam Scholder in here, man, and I'd love to hear what he thinks of Scorsese's '83 film, The King of Comedy, with Robert De Niro and Jerry Lewis. Adam, I'm sure, like all of us, this is something you've watched quite a few times.
Oh yeah.
What was the rescreening like, man?
Oh, it was fantastic, and well, I saw this movie in the theaters with my parents when it came out, and my mom was always a huge De Niro fan, and so we had seen other films of his. I was familiar with him, not that much, but I knew who the guy was, and even at that age, at 13 or so, it kind of blew me away, and it became one of my favorite films, and remained one of my favorite films. Seen it many, many, many times. Haven't watched it in years. Was awesome to have the opportunity to watch it again, and it held up. And it's my favorite De Niro performance across the board. I mean, there's so many good ones he's turned in, but this is it for me. This is his absolute best performance, and I really. Interestingly enough, it's a very similar movie, I thought, to hang on now. I just lost the Taxi Driver.
I think your dog wants to.
I was going to ask if you could ask your dogs what they think of The King of Comedy.
I can't mute it while I'm talking. Is the problem? It's the thing. But it's amazing. They're at the other end of the house. This mic is too good. Damn it.
Damn it. But you find parallels to Taxi Driver here.
Oh, absolutely. You have the anti-hero that's pretty much, shit upon, or feels shat upon by the world, and is going to do something big to make his mark. And even though it is completely misguided and dangerous, and movies kind of end the same way in a sense, although I think, in my opinion, the difference is in Taxi Driver, that is how it ends. The story that they leave you with, what happens to Travis Bickle. Whereas in The King of Comedy, I think that most likely we're probably meant to assume we're back in that fantasy world, that rich fantasy life of Pupkins, and he's probably sitting in a jail cell somewhere. And
do you think so? I can't quite nail that down. I know that you're not supposed to nail that
Sure.
down, but you think that that's what's going on? Huh?
What's funny was I don't think I ever really thought that. I think I always thought that it actually this launched him his career.
Right.
But watching it this time around, and of course, I'm older and more cynical now, but even just the filmmaking style at the end there was more like the fantasy sequences than reality. So I think
because all of his delusions or whatever were always like shown as televised.
Televised, and the lighting's a little different, and even just the way the announcer kept repeating his name like 4 or 5 times at the end during the applause. Rupert Pupkin. Rupert Pupkin.
Right.
So I'm pretty sure,
I always found it weird that the announcer did say that, like, over and over and over again. It's as many times as I've watched it. This is a new concept to me, Joe.
I just think
it's
just really quick. I just think it's a coda that represents the inside of Rupert Pupkin's mind.
Mm-hmm.
I just think that's the inside of his mind. Like it's just a quick sketch of what his life is. If you were standing inside his head, that's what you'd hear and see.
Yeah.
Sorry,
exactly.
Joe, go on.
I see.
But none of it's real.
I don't think so. I don't think that's my take on it. And
you don't think it's real either, Billy? You think it's a
You
delusion?
think it's a fantasy?
I think that the repetition of the name gives it away.
Yeah, you know what I would think about it. And
also, I think in 1983, like other than Network by is it Sidney Lumet that directs that Patty Chayefsky script?
Yeah.
No other movie really tackled. Although that James L. Brooks one was kind of about the cynicism of the media, but it never really went into absurdity. This and Network are the only ones that really launched into just pure absurdity, and so it seems like crazy in 1983. Now we take it for granted that someone can do something ridiculous, even illegal, and spend time who was the friggin' guy that went to prison for the Jack Abramoff? I just watched that documentary. He went to jail. He was a senator, Tom DeLay. He ends up on friggin' Dancing with the Stars when he gets out of prison, right? Scams millions and millions of dollars from people and ends up that's normal to us now. But in 1983, I think it was probably an absurd concept that guy would get a talk show host coming out of prison,
Right. I really thought, Joe, I've always thought that was a legitimate ending.
I have too. And
because
then
to me, that's what the people, because of what we're talking about here, that's what the people would demand. They'd want more of this guy, that he would be some kind of a hero in some fucking wacky way.
Always felt that that was it until I rewatched it, and it really jumped out at me this time.
Me too, actually. It was only this time that it really occurred to me that it was a possibility.
Yeah.
And now that we're talking about it, I think I kind of think that that's the case. It's weird.
Whereas Taxi Driver, Bickle, I think, that's all very real, that he goes on to sort of become this almost a hero, a savior of this young
and that
girl.
Reflection at the end is real to you in Taxi Driver of Sybil Shepherd. That's not in his mind.
I get, I think so. That's the sense I get, but I could be way off on that too.
No, of course. I mean, it's all theory. I mean, of course.
But I thought just very interesting parallels in terms of our lead character and his journey in both of those films. Just one of them is a very dark tale, and the other one, well, they're both dark tales, but one's a dark comedy. And have you guys ever seen, just speaking of dark comedies and Martin Scorsese, After Hours?
Oh, of course.
That's a great.
Well, that's the weird thing about the King Comedy, because he does the King Comedy and then he immediately does After Hours in '85, I believe, and he kind of just does right at him two really dark, bizarre comedies in a row, which was unlike Scorsese, which is great, and he produced to me two of his finest pieces of work. I mean, the guy's now, he's been around forever and he continues to make great movies. I mean, there's no doubt about it. You never know when he could come up with something that's gonna,
Oh, The Wolf of Wall Street just came out not too long ago.
And that's great. But Wolf of Wall Street is great. But these movies, I think, are on different levels, Joe.
Yeah, I agree. Well, it's funny. I just watched the special whatever making of documentary. It was really just an interview with Sandra Bernhard and Scorsese, on the disc here,
Nice.
and he sort of notes this as the end of
Personal
he
filmmaking.
yeah, and the personal filmmaking. It might be a little bit hyperbolic, obviously, but I think that in a case that in a real sense, it does kind of mark the end of that '70s era of.
Well,
American
83,
New
man.
York indie.
83 was Return of the Jedi. E.T. was the year before, and everything on Earth exploded in 1984. Like Gremlins and Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. I mean, that was everyone. At that point from 84 onward, it was pure blockbuster.
Like Hollywood was figuring out the business of turning out blockbusters.
Right. What started with Jaws and Star Wars was really starting to take shape by 83, 84. That's a really good point. So even a guy like
that was when the financial people started realizing that that's when they started reporting, when they started going by box office, basically designing products to get box office, not so much gambling on a film,
Right. They were probably doing testing and all that other stuff.
Well, I think he tries to hang in there a little bit, Billy, because after Hours, I think he made The Last Temptation of Christ, which is a
friggin' great film, but it also took him that actually fell through at one point, and they had to strip the budget down to nothing. And that's, actually the making of that movie is really interesting. He goes back to the Roger Corman days of how to make a low budget movie to get that made, and it was originally slated for a bigger production. So.
Yeah, he probably couldn't afford De Niro at that point either, which is why he went with Dafoe, right?
I have no idea. I never knew De Niro was
making a joke. Yeah.
Oh. But yeah, seriously, Raging Bull, King of Comedy, and After Hours is the most amazing 3-film run. It's incredible,
Yeah, it's quality, man.
Absolutely. And Taxi Driver led that off, so you really 4 amazing films. And then
I guess you could even go from Taxi if you want to, Billy. Now you don't have to. You could literally go from Taxi Driver to Casino if you wanted to.
Yeah, because Goodfellas was 1990.
Right after Temptation, right?
Yep.
That's crazy.
And then,
that is some string.
Then
man.
Casino, yes.
Yeah.
And I thought Taxi Driver was earlier than that.
Taxi Driver was 76, I think.
Sounds about right.
Yeah, 76. And then he did something in between.
Well, he did New York, and The Last Waltz.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's why I'm like, have you guys ever seen New York?
Yeah.
I've seen parts of it. That was whatever. It was on one night. Like this is a couple years ago, and I'm like, I'll check it out. And I couldn't hang in there, Billy.
I couldn't hang in there either. And I love Scorsese, but I was like, oh man,
of course.
That's why I'm sorry. That does break the momentum when you go from Taxi Driver to New York. I'm sorry. That's a hell of a speed bump right there.
Just a couple other films because this is a man that we could we've never talked Scorsese on the show, which is just fucking amazing. Really, I mean, we did Cape Fear. Which
is he coming on the show next episode or no?
Did you score an interview with him? That would be awesome.
No. I didn't even bother. I don't bother reaching out to a guy like that because they'll laugh us off they'll shut our podcast down if I.
He's like talk show host level.
You would do it.
To get there.
But just
Scorsese loves to talk. Are you kidding? Any opportunity.
Another film sandwiched in between Taxi Driver and Casino is The Color of Money as well, which is something Joe I think wanted to bring to the show at one point.
I did. I read The Hustler and I watched The Hustler very recently, and I've been meaning to get to do the same with The Color of Money. Actually, the Hustler, the novel. I don't know why we're going this far.
That's all right.
It's all the novel, The Hustler, fucking just smacked me from left field, man. It is it's one of those understated film books. I think the guy was trying to write the Great American Novel in a sense, man. It's fucking amazing. It just really blindsided me. So
you were thinking of doing a piece with the Hustler and the Color of Money is what you were doing.
Yeah, this dude Walter Tevis. Actually, I started reading him based on our discussion about the David Bowie film, that crazy alien.
The Man Who Fell to
The Man Who Fell to Earth. I read that, and then it led me to the other one, and then I know he wrote The Color of Money as well. I haven't read that one, so. Yeah, that's been on my radar. Actually, that's on my to-do list. Actually,
yeah, that's cool. But yeah, this man's work is just. I mean, this is ridiculous. I mean, this dude is outrageous, Scorsese. Seriously, and the fact that he's still plugging away. And Joe, you're right. The Wolf of Wall Street was just like, I mean, a million miles per hour it came at you, you know. I think we were talking about it at one point when it came out, and Billy and I were discussing it, and we both agreed that, you know, Hyper Scorsese is the best Scorsese. And it's just amazing that he is just still putting shit together. And I know that he is attached to doing a Mike Tyson biopic.
Is that right?
Which, I mean, because Tyson too is always an interesting guy. I mean, no matter what, you know, you got on him.
He's got an interesting story, and he's a great way to, you know, get to lead you into that corrupted world of boxing.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's such a cinematic, is a cinematic sort of trope, I guess, that hasn't really been delved into.
There have been movies. There was a HBO movie made about Mike Tyson, which was just kind of fluff. And there's been, I think James Toback made a really good documentary about Tyson around 2008, where he just really just put the camera in front of Tyson and just let him go to town. And then Spike Lee just directed Tyson does like a one-man show about his life, which is really good. I don't know if anybody ever.
I've heard of that. I heard about that. Yeah,
because Tyson is just fascinating. It's amazing. It blows me away how fascinating Mike Tyson.
Well, that guy, he became a cult of personality, you know, in what was it, the late '80s or the mid, what was it, early '90s, I guess. And he would just come out and punch somebody out in like 20 seconds. You'd get together at a party or something, and then that it would be over in like a minute.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it was insane. I mean, his reign of terror on the boxing world for a good 5 years, I think, was just outrageous. You know, before he self-destructed, which is where the story, I think, would probably be with Scorsese. He'd probably be very curious about the self-destruction. Scorsese's also attached to a Ramones biopic as well.
Exactly.
Yeah, which
I think he's doing a documentary about the dead, I think.
Well, that's interesting.
I think I thought I heard.
Well, how old is Scorsese? I mean, how the hell?
It's amazing. The Clash is in King of Comedy.
Yeah, that's right. They were heckling Sandra Bernhard
on this
after her and Pupkin had that like little exchange where she gives him the money, and he's like, "All right, this is the last time I'm doing this."
And those scenes on the streets of New York and Midtown are amazing, man. It's just great.
How's that Times Square? Doesn't look like that anymore, does it?
No, that looks scary.
Yeah, it
really did.
All those, you never know what kind of maniacs walking around. Like, you feel like you're about to get mugged when just walking.
The scene where Jerry Lewis is walking and that lady's on the payphone and wants him to talk to her nephew Morris, I think is the name in the hospital. Is really funny. It's also a scene that Jerry Lewis directed for the film, which was cool. Because
I think it's something that came right from his life. I think that actually happened.
Absolutely, Joe. That's exactly what it was, man. Yeah, it's like, you know, it's just so like some of my favorite scenes too. I mean, every scene. I mean, from beginning to end is just incredible. But just any scene Lewis is walking down the street and comedy is just hysterical. You know?
Just the way he's walking.
Yes. Yeah, and he kind of has like a girlish walk to him at some point, like a very proper girlish walk, which is
you know, I haven't watched too many Jerry Lewis movies. I can't really.
That's how I wanted to end this little segment, is to ask you guys about that.
Okay, go ahead.
Joe, because I've not studied his work, and I think that a lot of people are impressed with his films. You know, I know the French do, but I mean, some people consider him a really good filmmaker. I don't know him well enough to have a comment on that. Billy might, Adam might. If you do, guys, if you've watched a few Jerry Lewis films, I'm curious to know what you think, man.
Well, you might. I grew up in a Jerry Lewis friendly household. My dad was a huge Jerry Lewis fan. He grew up sort of idolizing him, and so I saw many of his films when I was young. And from what I understand, I can't remember which film it is, The Bellboy maybe, where he really designed a whole style of filming that is still used to this day. The set was this a fully interactive, fully immersible set. The use of the camera. He was fairly pioneering in some filmmaking aspects, and I wish I knew more because I know I'm being pretty vague. His performances were often very slapstick and goofy, and I don't think anyone saw him taking this turn in this film where he really played a version of himself.
Right.
And it was pretty raw and real, and he really delivered it. And
totally.
I thought it was fantastic. And I had the opportunity once not to really meet him, but when my dad was actually in the hospital for a minor surgery, I was in my teens. I just kind of decided to wander around the hospital one day when I was visiting and wandered off the elevator onto the set of Hardly Working. And Jerry Lewis and Madeline Kahn were filming a scene in the hospital. And
that's like the last movie he directed, right?
I think that might be true. Yeah, that might be the case.
One of the last ones, yeah.
And it's a ridiculous film. But, they were totally cool that I was there, and they just kind of let me hang out and watch him film a couple scenes. And,
wow.
And I just sat there really quietly and just observed in the, cool. On a little wing of the hospital there. And it was awesome. Yeah.
It doesn't surprise me that you say that in The Bellboy, like he created a set design, I guess that was pioneering. From what I understand, he was a very efficient filmmaker. That he'd always come in under budget. He'd always come in a few days early. That he just was a very efficient filmmaker. Billy, did you watch? Do you have any experience with his films?
Well, I really liked him when I was a little kid, because for the same Robin Williams thing, he's just like a monkey bouncing around the screen, So the old Dean Martin, Jerry Lewis movies, yeah. But, at a certain point, it's like you stop and go, hey, this isn't funny. This is obnoxious. Like it's really, funny. Yeah. So, but from what I hear, he was he really wanted to be a European style auteur filmmaker here. I guess he developed a video assist. He was the first director to actually do that.
Oh,
and then
playbacks. Right?
Yeah. So they could review a take right after they watched it, right?
Yeah, that's it.
He was also, I think, the only American director. I remember there's this crazy movie that he did that was shelved called The Day the Clown Cried or something like that. Am I getting that right? It was this insane movie about a guy who dresses up as a clown in a concentration camp. And
I heard about that.
Yeah,
wow.
And I've seen clips from it. You can see clips of it online, and it's one of those like Hollywood legends kind of. But apparently, he was the first director to use playback, like music playback on set. So that he would play music while they were filming, so like Fellini used to do, to get everyone in the mood and to get a rhythm to everything, so that everyone was moving to a beat, And then of course they would dub it over later, but the rhythm remained in the movement, So he was definitely trying to be he was trying to be a proper filmmaker for sure. And there are stories about him just butting heads with studios, and the legend goes that he was too much of a perfectionist, so that's why he didn't keep working as a director,
Interesting. Very good. See a little Jerry Lewis for you, Joe Christiana.
There you go. I don't know if I can bring myself to a Jerry Lewis retrospective, but I'll put it on my list. I'm not quite sure if I can make that happen here. Hey, I have two things. I want to talk. I think we should talk a little bit about Sandra Bernhard, and then I just want to ask Billy really quick, Tom. That last comment that he made, that fan and celebrity is based on a relationship of hate. I would love to hear what's going on there, dude. What do you mean?
Let's do that first. Billy, you want to answer Joe's question?
I know it's hyperbolic, as Joe likes to say. A bit hyperbolic, as Joe likes to say. I think that I think that there's a two-way street in people's love and adoration of celebrity, and I think it's based in part on hatred and jealousy. And I think that's why there's a sort of sadomasochistic relationship that happens there, where
Like you want them to fail.
yeah, well,
Like,
it's why I mean it's like. I mean, this has been around forever. This summer I read a biography of Marie Antoinette, and I was blown away at how similar the relationship between royalty and the commoners were at that point, and celebrity and audience today. And they loved her for the first half of her career and were ecstatic to parade her through the streets and chop off her head when they were done with her, you know? And today it's just people hacking actresses' iPhones and showing their sex videos,
Right.
putting their sex videos up on the internet. You know, there's a real master and slave thing going on there, where it's like celebrities can be punished by the public whenever they feel like it. Like, yeah, I mean, you see it all the time. Someone says one thing on Twitter, and then everyone just up in arm. You know,
Right.
they're just dragging them down and beating them. You know, throwing mud on their face in the street. You know, it's just now it's on the internet. You know, so
yeah.
you know, and in the movie, it's pretty clear that Rupert Pupkin doesn't give a shit about Jerry. Jerry just embodies an idea that Rupert has in his head, and he
There's
gets
a great
as close to
moment.
him as he can. And then once Jerry is actually an obstacle to him getting what he wants, he brushes him aside without batting an eyelash. He doesn't have any compunction about doing that. You know,
Right.
there's a great scene.
Oh, there was just a great line where Sandra Bernhard's character Masha says, "That's not him. When it's him, it never looks like him."
Right.
Yeah. Yep.
When they're getting ready for the kidnapping. Yeah, that's great.
They're only what they imagine you to be. The celebrities are only what you imagine them to be, and then when they fail that conception of them, then just like any good old French queen, you could behead them in the town square as promptly as possible.
Baffled by people like the commoners, you, me, and everybody we know, saying, like, having an opinion on a celebrity's life. How do you have an opinion on that? You don't know that person. They're not your friend. They're not your family. Positive or negative, like, for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. So if you're commenting favorably on someone's life who you've never met, that's just as phony and full of shit as commenting unfavorably, right?
Right.
It's the same thing. So, you know, your admiration for this person is total horseshit. You don't know them, you know?
Right.
It boggles my mind.
Well, celebrity.
But at the same time,
difficult.
there's a human need for that because it's been around forever, you know?
Idol worship.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
Sandra Bernhard, Joe. What's what do you want to?
Oh, she's amazing in this
Yeah.
film, man. And I mean, she just deserves to be talked about for a couple of minutes here. I remember seeing this film as a kid and just the sexuality that I know she's not an attractive woman, but
No.
I mean, that scene with her, I mean, she is attractive in some sense, you know,
guys,
like
you're the worst.
not good.
She's not a good-looking broad.
I mean,
but,
I don't mean it like that. That's not typically attractive. But when I was a kid, I was just so taken by her. I know.
Enough, Joe. Enough.
I guess I'm not going to
No,
dig myself out of that.
No,
She's like,
listen, dude.
Scorsese describes her as a sexual predator in that
Sexual terrorist.
terrorist.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
But no, Joe, I'm with you. Listen, when I saw this in the theaters when I was 13, you know, and she's drops down to the panties and that whole scene. It's like, yeah, there was some material there for a young boy at the time.
Yeah, I was mesmerized. It was maybe one of the first times I ever was exposed to something like that, and I was like, "Holy shit!" I was like
that
it
danger,
definitely
that like the bad girl.
There was definitely alarms going
She
off
got
in my
she got prettier as she got crazier, which unfortunately set the course for most of my adult until I met my wife. So I blame Scorsese and Bernhard.
Scorsese just cut her loose too because she wasn't, a trained actor or anything. So he kind of just let her do what she wanted, I guess. Or
that scene, that monologue. I don't know. There's a lot of improv. In
total.
this movie,
I think hers is mostly. Mostly
that when she says, I feel so impulsive. I want to
be black.
Be black. I mean, it doesn't get better than that.
When she says, yeah, she's like, I want to be Tina Turner. She's like, ow. Just a little Tina Turner thing.
Yep.
But yeah, you're right, Joe. And she is, because she's in a film full of boys here, and she just kind of, just works her way in and creates the MASH is, it's something you don't forget,
It's amazing. When she was talking in that interview, she's talking about what Jerry represents to her. And that was
great. I love it.
Yeah, he represents like this old guard of Jewish men who sort of humored women, but they had their place, and and she's like this really empowered, strong young woman, and that just dynamic just played so well. I mean, it's just a testament to all three of them.
The hostility that Jerry Lewis has for her in that movie is palpable. It's so great. Like, you can tell he has contempt for her.
Lastly, guys, when he pulls the trigger on that gun, does he know that it's fake before he pulls the trigger? Or was he going to kill her?
Oh,
I think the first one he shot, he didn't shoot at her. I thought it looked like he shot off to the side.
Okay.
And then once he saw
I thought it was pointing at her, though. Okay. All right. Well, I was just curious, man. Because I never noticed that before, and I was like, man, was he willing to shoot her right in the stomach right there? And it just wow.
I didn't notice that. I thought it was pretty deliberately like stated by the film that he wasn't trying to kill her.
Okay. All right. Cool. All right. Just a thought.
He did smack the shit out of her, though.
Oh, he did. Yeah. And then ran.
No compunction about that.
He smacked her and ran.
Yeah, that's true.
I would have got the fuck out.
And there's another great New York moment, because it just would not surprise you if you're walking, on 30th Street or whatever, wherever the hell you might live. I guess upper East Side or whatever. If you just see a woman just running down in her, in her panties down the street, you look at him like, oh well,
yeah, another day in paradise. All right, guys, thanks a lot for talking about Scorsese's The King of Comedy. Excellent stuff. We're going to move on to the second half of the show, the final segment. We're going to do Frank Whaley's 2001 film, The Jimmy Show. Joe Christiana is going to give the introduction, so let's get it moving. Joe?